Hello and welcome. This is our community's 951, bringing you the Real Estate 101 in the 951. Today we have my co-host David Serpa, branch manager of our community.
Hello, Amy.
How you doing?
Good.
Good. And then we've got our expert on multi-units today, Martin Bermudez with Golden One Credit Union.
It's great to be here.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. We're really excited. We've got a fantastic show built out for you guys today. We're going to be discussing multi-units, whether or not you qualify to buy and what that looks like. We're going to be talking about the do's and don'ts, and we're also going to be talking about multi-units, where to find them, what's the best location, and give you guys a quick breakdown of what this looks like. So Martin, give us an idea of what you have going on in the multi-unit industry. And
absolutely appreciate that. 2 to 4 units are an area of real estate that not a lot of people focus energies on, and I think it has a lot to do with kind of the fairy tales that we were taught being brought up, as far as curb appeal at a house with a white picket fence and across the street from the churchyard. It's that you can have that in units for sure, but really the way I look at 2 to 4 units is it's a way to short circuit your way into real estate ownership and also generating rental income. And then basically it's a replicatable approach to buying real estate.
This was one of the shows that I really wanted to do because we talk a lot about creating generational wealth. And the thing about creating generational wealth, sometimes it takes a generation to create it.
Yeah.
And it requires some knowledge about how to create it. So if someone is going to get into multi-unit residential, I find that most of the time when I talk to people about this, the first thing is, I don't think I would qualify for that, because multi-unit, the price point is higher, of course, because now you've got some income to offset your living expenses if you're living in one of them. But what is the process like, and what is it? Is it difficult to qualify to buy multi-resident?
Well, the great thing about 4-unit properties is in a lot of ways, the property will determine if you qualify or not, because it's a combination of your income as well as the potential rents that you'll receive on. Let's just say, for example, you're buying 1 unit and renting the other 3 units out. So what'll happen is the future rents that you'll receive from your tenants it's essentially like having a co-borrower on the loan with you. So let's just say, I use as an example, kind of your average Riverside County rent, which is $2,500 right now.
Mm-hmm.
So you figure you've got 3 borrowers. Well, you've got three tenants, 3 renters that are paying $2,500 a month in rent. So you've got $7,500 on top of your own income, whatever that might be, that will be used to qualify. So the magic of 4 units is that you've got the additional leverage, and you can buy a property that's significantly more expensive than something you would have bought on your own. I've had situations, without citing specifics, I've had situations where I had borrowers who, made a teacher's salary, and they were able to buy a 4-unit property that services the debt, so that enables them to essentially live rent-free.
That's interesting. Yeah, I think that people think that they've got to be a millionaire. Right. They've got to have a whole bunch of income. And in fact, it's a way to offset some of your living expenses if you decide to live in one of them.
Correct.
Do you find that people more often than not are living in one of the 2 units or one of the 4 units, or are they buying these to hold and rent out entirely?
Oh, right. Very good question. Well, I always go over the specifics when I'm dealing with the customer and some of the requirements, right? The truth of the matter is, as long as they live on the property for a year, 12 months, after that 12-month period, it's totally up to them what they want to do. If they want to rent all 4 units out, buy another 4-unit property somewhere with a new FHA loan, or if in the case of 1 to 2 units, a VA loan, they can go and do that all over again. They don't have to refinance that existing loan to get out of an FHA or to get out of a VA in order to do it all over again. They can have a whole series of FHA and VA
That was
loans.
going to be my other question for you, because Amy and I are both veterans, and a lot of veterans, they're entrepreneurs. Right. They're hustlers. They've got side gigs and whatnot. They want to know that their BAH, their basic allowance for their housing, is going to go to work for them. And so to me, as an outsider, this looks like a great opportunity. Oceanside, Hemet, San Jacinto, some of these places in North County where you could buy a 2-unit, live in one, rent out the other, and then potentially refi that conventional. Use your VA again when you go to a new city, North Carolina, Camp Lejeune, Hawaii, and then when that way, 20 years from now, you've had 3-4 different duty stations, you've got 3-4 different houses, and now you've got 4 2-unit properties that you could sell, or just stay cash positive forever. And our veterans are not looking at things like this. And that's what kills me. That's why we're doing Real Estate 101 in the 951.
Right. No, and I appreciate you bringing that up because you're absolutely right. Areas like Vista, San Marcos, Escondido are chock full of 2 houses on a lot type of properties, which represent, an equally great opportunity because that's rental income. And one of the things I wanted to point out, hopefully not getting too off topic, is that, whereas a home is worth what it's intrinsically worth, what the market will bear. The great thing about 2 to 4 units is they're also buoyed up by the rental income that they can generate. So what a real big point I wanted to make today is, as far as when people talk about the real estate, a downturn or something along those lines, this is a kindergarten downturn compared to the mortgage meltdown. So what happens is, whereas hundreds of thousands, maybe 1 million homes across the country were lost after the meltdown due to foreclosure or short sale or whatever the case might be, we're talking only a handful of income producing properties were lost during the same period. I don't have the specific numbers, but I'm sure we could pull some research on that and give hard numbers. But the great thing about rental income property is you're not as subject to the ebb and flow of the economy because it's supported by the rental income.
To play the devil's advocate.
Right.
So, we saw during COVID-19, we saw evictions, a moratorium on evictions, which of course has now been lifted.
Correct.
We've seen a lot of things happen, like the student loan payments are no longer being required. That might go away next month. There's a lot of people that all of a sudden are going to become more house poor because rent payments have gone up. Purchasing has gone up. Everything has gone up. It's very hard to break even. Is this something that is recession proof? Is it? And nothing is recession proof.
Correct.
But how do you weather the storm as a multi-unit owner versus owning a single family residence?
Right. That's an excellent question. I mean, everyone's experience, of course, has varied dramatically across the country. But, being in this space for a long time and being a 4-unit investor myself, we pretty much came through it. For the most part, we came through it all right. A lot of assistance was available for tenants as well as, property owners during that period of time. Only the tip of the iceberg of it was really exhausted, which is really a shame because I think a lot of unit owners and as well as renters may have missed out on some opportunities to avail themselves of some help. I don't want to say that it's foolproof or completely risk-free. Anytime you have properties that are rentals, there's a risk involved. But one thing I'd like to point out, especially for first-time home buyers that are also buying units, is property management is probably the cheapest money you've ever spent. I don't know if that's a cliche, but the thing about it is some people have it in their blood to be a property manager.
100%.
Right? And it's like they just want to have at it, and that's great. I myself am not put together that way, so I'm
not interested in it. I know how much money's in property management. I don't have it. Starina Cardenas, who was going to be here today, is a property manager.
That's great.
But she's sick, and so she wasn't able to be here. But you were saying about property management.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, property management. I mean, usually, I think if you averaged it out, it's about 10% of your rent. But the property manager takes care of servicing the renter. They might have some plumbing problems, or the pilot of the gas heater goes out, or any number of things. Collecting rent, selecting tenants, vetting their credit and income, make sure that they're going to be good tenants. And
which, of course, is not to say that they're the one that is going to be paying for the heater that goes out or anything like that.
Correct.
But they will do a lot of the coordinating, like you said, screening the tenants. There are a lot of things that you could do, especially, you live near a military base, renting to active duty military members. You can always hit up their chain of command if they stop paying rent. So there's a lot of things that you could do to protect yourself.
That's a great angle that us civilians don't take advantage of. You're right about that.
Well, I'm curious, Martin, how does it work exactly being VA and then purchasing these multi-unit properties?
Well, the beauty of the VA, I mean, it goes without saying, but I'll say it anyway. The single best way to finance property on earth is a VA. I've had the pleasure of doing VAs for, $2 million properties. So, I mean, obviously that veteran was successful and, they could qualify. So they've done well with themselves. But to me, if I could buy 2 units of VA, I mean, it doesn't really get any better than that, because then you don't, whereas, the rest of us that have to buy with an FHA have to save up that 3.5% down. You can go fully leveraged on 2 units with VA, 100% financing. Obviously, there's closing costs involved in this and that, but still, truly, that's a win. Really, a double win that way.
When you're looking at these multi-units, for a person who's getting at it the first time, like that you own some of these units.
Right.
What are some things to look at? What are some do's and don'ts?
Oh,
maybe we start with the don'ts. Okay.
Well, yeah. Let's definitely look at the don'ts. I think a lot of people kind of go in with a little bit, a certain naivete as to expenses.
Oh, sure.
Right? Because sometimes all of us. It's not the tendency, and again, 4 units is my specialty, so that's what I have the most experience with. You're going to have 3 out of the 4 units need a new gas water heater. You're going to need 3 out of the 4 need new windows, or something will go haywire with the air conditioning or heating or something. You have to be prepared for that cascade of things versus just a one-off. Right, it's true. You do have to have some capital behind you. So and that's the tricky part, right? Because you literally can buy a 4-unit property with an FHA loan and have 0 reserves at close of escrow.
Yep.
So it's you need to have a little bit of a safety net there as far as being able to help you with management costs to some degree, but more so for repairs and unexpected.
At the end of the day, creating generational wealth, a lot of people are slim. I mean, I'm talking VA margins like this, debt to income ratio where you've like this much room for error.
Absolutely, sure.
And I can tell you, when people are trying to make it work, they'll do just about anything to make it work. You know what I mean? Because they're sick of renting. They're sick of paying away 100% of their money towards someone else's mortgage. They believe in the American dream. They believe in ownership, and they're just trying to bridge that gap. So I'm one of those people who's like, hey, if you can make it happen, your job's not going anywhere, jump in. But that is one of the things that people forget about, especially if you're not hiring a property manager, is that it takes some money to make money. And if you don't have the money to make money, it takes sweat equity and connections.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No, I've gone in and painted and spackled and, filled in holes in the drywall before.
Yeah.
And you have to really be hands-on. But, one of the things that I've found that's really powerful is endearing yourself to your tenants. And a lot of them don't know who I am. They've never seen me before. They don't know, what I'm about. It's probably better that way. But what I do try to do, what I do try to do is, like, I'll make little bicycles available for the kids to use.
Oh, cool.
I'll make sure that there's a play area. I've done a lot of solar remodels in some of them. Well, let's just not a remodel, solar in the first place, right? So I've done some touches to make their expenses less and their lives a little bit better, and you get a lot of goodwill that way. Definitely.
Sure. So build some goodwill.
Absolutely, build goodwill. Yes.
Have some capital. Be willing to put in some sweat equity.
Correct.
What would you tell people not to do?
Oh, great. Yeah. Well, one thing that I think the hard part that my buyers have is visualizing themselves in a place. Now, don't get me wrong. Some people have a hard time visualizing themselves in a 4-unit apartment, 3 blocks from the beach. But it still involves a little bit of a leap of faith. It really does. And what's interesting is I don't have as many people in the medical profession as you would think would be interested in that property type, because let's just say you're a new doctor or a new RN or something or other.
Sure.
You're not going to have a lot of time to mow the lawn, and you kind of want a turnkey type of life, right? So, whereas a lot of them buy condos and townhomes for that very reason, there's no reason why not to consider a 4-unit property type, because it is truly turnkey living if you want to look at it.
I'd say don't disqualify yourself. I think a lot of people disqualify themselves. They say, oh, you know what, like you said, you've gotten it done on a teacher's salary.
Absolutely.
You've had people but you're also encouraging, hey, doctors, lawyers, people while you're starting something new, while you've got a smaller life that you want to grow into. A lot of young people, I think that this would be great for. I think of my generation, I think of millennials, and I think about the fact that home buying is so expensive. A lot of people are looking for that alternative, where it's like, maybe if I had a little bit less, maybe if I had somebody else that was also helping me pay it down. So I think that these 4 units, ideally, that's a great way to do it.
I think it's a great way to do it. I mean, I can give you an example, and
please,
we'll put some figures on the board a little bit later. But I've had customers that could qualify for a $350,000 house on their own, which really isn't going to buy you much right now. Or they could buy $1 million 4-unit property. So it's kind of it's a lot of leverage. It's a lot of added buying power.
It puts a lot to work for you. Other people's capital towards like you said, offsetting it with what you could expect to bring in. Trevor Bodie, one of our partners here in the office, told me he's got a 4-unit for under $1 million in LA right now.
Wow.
And I'm thinking, LA, there's a lot of issues right now in LA, especially with the homeless.
True.
And a lot of the post-pandemic issues of what LA looks like. But the thing is buying 4 units in LA for
amazing.
Under $1 million? Are you kidding me?
Yeah,
and so
take a look at that.
Going from, hey, I know I could only qualify for $350,000. What does that get me? Well, that probably gets me a condo. Okay, well, why don't I qualify for $1 million, buy a 4-unit, still have that condo lifestyle, but be a landlord?
Exactly.
I love it.
Oh yeah, it's how can I put it? And I'm fortunate to have gotten some guidance as a young man about the purchasing of units and kind of the disciplines involved in making that happen. So, I like to pay it forward. I like to, let people know there's nothing mysterious or scary about it. I'd love to be sitting here talking to you about how to buy 25 units and 50 units. But
you know what, though? This isn't that show. This isn't that show. And so this is about making real estate accessible. It's real estate 101.
Sure.
It isn't real estate, 901. This isn't the master course, right? So I really appreciate you making the time.
Of course.
To show up today and talk about this. Because it is something that's very mysterious for a lot of people.
Absolutely. Appreciate that. Now, one thing I wanted to mention, and again, we're going to go into the figures really quickly, but
I'll make sure I post those when I'm editing them.
For the $1 million sales price, that would involve a $35,000 down payment. That's 3.5% down. So essentially what we're looking at is total principal, interest, taxes, and insurance payment of $72,588.14 on rents received of $7,500 a month. So what's that telling you? Can I afford that 4-unit property?
I think the big one there with those numbers would be the down payment.
Absolutely, and that's the big part.
I think that $35,000 down payment would be pretty significant. And not a lot of people that. A lot of people who have that $35,000 qualify for a little bit more than $350,000.
Right.
But what that tells you is you've got 3 other people paying off your units, and a lot of times it takes 3 to pay off that 4th. It takes 3 rental homes to pay off that 4th home. It takes 3 rental condos to pay off that 4th condo. And you own 1 house, you're average. You own 2 homes, you're landlord. You own 3 homes, you're finally at a position to where you've got some passive income.
Correct.
Martin, anything else?
Just that this is something you can replicate at will. I mean, I really recommend for, and it goes without saying, but I'll say it anyway. You have to be a disciplined saver to make this work. I mean, honestly, that's the ask, right? That we all become disciplined savers to pursue this as an alternative to to buying a single family residence. It's a lot less competitive in this space. There's generally a lot more cooperation with the lender for some reason. Again, keeping in mind that the value of the property and your net worth have that tendency to go up that much faster and that much more deliberately when you own units compared to single family residences. One thing I also wanted to mention too is, there's a lot of builders out here, and in all honesty, we don't have anywhere near enough multi-units being built. So that's kind of another thing that I think we should all maybe get our toe in the water a little bit and maybe demand that these builders explore that as an option, because for multi-unit properties don't bring down the value of your single family residences.
That's correct.
There's no cause and effect to that.
Well, unfortunately, in America, everything's single family homes on 10,000 square foot lots, and not everybody can afford that. And so most of us end up in a situation where our children cannot afford to buy into the neighborhoods where they grew up in. And it's because we are not willing to rezone some of these for multifamily. And so if we were willing to do that, and the Temecula Valley, in some of these areas where we're just rezone some lots, some lots. Then what it would do is it would make it so that our kids, when they graduate from high school, they don't have to live with their parents, or they don't, you know what I mean? They just have a chance to do something else.
Oh, absolutely. You're absolutely right.
Well said, Martin.
Living in the same neighborhood you grew up does mean a lot.
Yeah, well, you definitely changed my mind about some things today.
Okay.
Awesome. It's nice to hear. I was thinking before the show, multi-units aren't necessarily the most affordable. It's certainly the highest profitable. But that being said, when you're factoring in that rental income, like you broke down, in fact, it could be more affordable. Like you said, you might qualify at that 350 mark. But then again, you might also qualify at $1 million for a multi-unit. Just like Rich Dad Poor Dad. He bought his first multi-unit leveraging his debt, putting that down payment on his credit card, which is super interesting. So there's lots of options with being able to build that generational wealth we talk about.
Yeah, well said.
Amen. There's one thing I wanted to mention too is, you can borrow. I mean, obviously, the down payment that's the missing ingredient, right? But you can borrow against your 401k. You can get a gift from relatives, totally, either in the FHA or VA spaces, which is where I specialize in 4 units. That's totally acceptable. So again, recognizing that it's not easy saving up all your ducats for that down payment, but there are ways to possibly leverage some tools that you already have available.
And what's the down payment for VA?
0. And so, and keep in mind that your ratios, I mean, I've seen, having done a lot of VAs over the years, the income to debt ratios can be off the charts, but if I get an approved eligible, we're ready to go.
That's
so
awesome.
What about credit? If I can ask that real quick. Credit as it pertains to VA, I know that we don't necessarily have a limit as far as that goes, but how does it work with multi-units?
With multi-units, good question. Typically, you want to see credit score around 620 or higher. That's generally kind of the promised land. It doesn't mean you can't have a lower score. It can be all the way down to 580 in our world. I know other lenders can go lower than that, as low as 550 on FHA. So it doesn't have to be perfect. Far from it, really. To have a 580 or 620 score, it doesn't generally require perfection there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. This is honestly a lot easier and plentiful opportunities in being able to really consider this as a tool to be able to build wealth. So thank you so much for being here, Martin. It really was a pleasure.
Oh, likewise.
Learned a lot today. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, David, for being here. It's a fantastic show on multi-units. You guys grab a notepad. get a pen and feel free to take all the notes in the world on this multi-unit show. And of course, the veteran community, this is a wealth of information I didn't realize was an option before I got into real estate. Now I look at it and I'm going, hey, have you considered multi-units as a veteran? So anyway, we're going to sign off today, and thank you all for watching the show. We're bringing you the 101 in the 951, and this is 951 with our community.